Hey there folks, Rel here. Today we'll be comparing the Serpent and the VX6-7, which are both fast-firing carbines for the Vanu sovereignty. I've been a long-time fan of the VX6-7, and if you watch any of my light assault videos, that's usually what I'm using, especially when I play Drifter. So when people started suggesting that I compare it to the Serpent, I was very interested to see how well the Serpent would hold up against my favorite weapon, especially after it was buffed. And for those who don't know, as just a real quick aside, the Serpent used to have a very long reload time, and this was its major downside. And I'm a fan of quick reloading weapons, but they for some reason decided to buff the Serpent's reload speed, and that's kind of where we are now. If you are the type of person who likes a too long didn't watch, then I'm going to basically say that the Serpent does more damage per second, has a longer reload, and is generally more accurate, while the VX6-7 trades some of that damage per second for versatility and a smaller hipfire cone of fire. Of course, I don't feel like that explanation does either weapon justice, so if you're still with me, let's take a look at these similarities, and then we'll break down the differences. Both weapons have a 30-round magazine with 180 ammo in reserve. They carry the same attachments, which are both meant for close quarters fighting. They have soft point ammo, a standard forward grip, an advanced laser sight, a flashlight, suppressor, flash suppressor, and scopes 1x through 6x, which includes the night vision scope but does not have access to the 2x. They both deal 143 damage within 10 meters and 100 damage at 60 meters. That means that they are a 7-shot kill within 10 meters and a 10-shot kill at max distance, and that's basically where the similarities end. The VX6-7 costs 1000 certs or 750 station cash, while the Serpent costs 250 certs and 500 station cash. The VX6-7 reloads at 2.15 seconds short and 2.755 seconds long, while the Serpent reloads at 2.59 seconds short and 2.89 seconds long. Remember that the Serpent did receive a buff to its reload speed, and I believe that it used to reload at more than 3 seconds even on a short reload, and this is really what defined the weapon, what actually gave it a substantial downside. And I also remember it being the main reason that I did not buy the thing way back in the day. The VX6-7 fires at 800 rounds per minute, while the Serpent fires at 845 rounds per minute, and this ties with the GD-TAC-7F for the fastest fire carbine in the game. If you want to talk theoretical times to kill, provided all shots hit on the chest, and assuming you fired your first shot, you're looking at about a 450 millisecond or 0.45 second time to kill for the VX6-7 within 10 meters, about a 426 millisecond or 0.426 second time to kill for the Serpent within 10 meters, a 675 millisecond or 0.675 second time to kill for the VX6-7 at max distance, and about a 0.64 second time to kill for the Serpent at maximum distance. So by looking just at the numbers, the Serpent obviously has an advantage in straight time to kill, even though it is pretty slight. And like we talked about with the Lynx versus Jaguar video, a higher rate of fire also gives you a better chance at landing shots on target, which is especially helpful for players who just spray and pray. Also, when I say spray and pray, I don't mean that as a bad thing. The average accuracy of your run-of-the-mill player is about 20%, so it should be pretty clear how having a higher rate of fire can help you. Before we move on to talking about recoil and accuracy, I do want to mention that the projectile velocity of each weapon is a little bit different. In this case, it's 465 for the VX6-7 and 420 for the Serpent. For the Lynx and the Jaguar, it was 450 and 440 respectively. Now that's not a huge difference and you'd likely never notice it, but a 45 meter second per difference is a little bit more substantial. I am stressing the words little bit because even when testing this at 75 to 80 meters, the differences both with and without silencers and soft point ammo attached were very negligible, especially since bullet drop is not a factor. Also, you shouldn't be fighting at anything beyond 50 meters anyway, so this is really a non-issue. I did have some comparisons to show you, but the differences were so minor that I didn't think it was worth including in this video. Maybe we'll use these comparisons if we talk about soft point ammo, silencers, and bullet velocity in general, But now that that's said, the last and probably most important factor we have to consider is the recoil and the cone of fire of each weapon. The VX6-7 is pretty standard as far as recoil goes. It pulls up and it pulls to the right, like most carbines in the game. It has a pretty nasty first shot recoil multiplier of 3 times, which is the highest of any carbine in the game, and a moderate vertical recoil of 0.3 per shot. This generally means that the weapon is pretty difficult to control, and even more difficult to burst, at least while aiming down sights. It does, however, get smaller cones of fire while hip firing. And that cone of fire advantage that the VX6-7 gets over the Serpent is about 5 shots worth. So after firing 5 shots with the VX6-7, the hip fire cone of fire will be as small as the Serpent's starting cone of fire. And this is a pretty sweet advantage, especially for players who can headshot easily in close quarters. As far as recoil and handling goes for the Serpent, the recoil pattern goes up and to the left, which is different than most carbines. However, it does have a first shot recoil multiplier of only 2.5 times, and that's pretty low. And then we put that on top of the low vertical recoil of 0.22 per shot, and you have a very controllable weapon while aiming down sights. So if you break this down, it means that the Serpent has a very easy time burst firing, staying accurate, aiming down sights. When I first started playing with the weapon, I thought the fact that the weapon pulls up and to the left would be a big turnoff for me, because it definitely feels that way on other weapons. However, because the recoil is just so low, you're barely going to notice it, especially if you slap a forward grip on it, which I feel is a completely viable attachment for the Serpent, as it is really amazing while aiming down sights. The VX6-7 on the other hand is more difficult to use while aiming down sights and burst firing, outside of anything but short to medium short range. It is, however, amazing at hip firing thanks to that extremely tight cone of fire, and that trumps the Serpent by 5 shots. And just for the sake of being thorough, the VX6-7 actually has that same 5-shot advantage over every other VS carbine in the game, as they all have the same hip fire cone of fires. As far as attachments go, both weapons are very versatile. Regardless of which attachments you throw on them, they're going to be good right out of the box. The recoil is manageable, especially within their effective range. Their cone of fire is manageable as well, so what you want to do is tailor the weapon toward your specific playstyle. As a player who aims down sights, I found myself enjoying the forward grip on the Serpent instead of the advanced laser sight that it has access to. The only precaution I'd throw in there is that the VX6-7 does have that nasty first shot recoil multiplier. So this could be worth emphasizing the hip fire cone of fire and just learning to use the weapon that way, opposed to aiming down sights and using a forward grip. I have played with both options a good deal, and I've been successful either way. So this really comes down to you. I do believe that soft point ammo should always be equipped, not just on this weapon, but on practically any weapon that has access to it, and if you're not already using high velocity ammo. The decreased bullet velocity just is not noticeable, but the benefit it provides is very substantial. The only thing for attachments that I've gone back and forth about is the suppressor. Unlike soft point, suppressors drop your bullet velocity by a lot, and that's on top of the fact that your damage range is reduced. And I would only suggest using one if you play within very short ranges. The flash suppressor is a good solid option as well. It does increase your cone of fire bloom a little bit, but since you're likely going to be using these weapons in close quarters or in bursts at range, the benefits, at least in my opinion, will outweigh the downsides. So as a player, you really have to make some decisions as to what you value most. A lot of the times, weapons tend to be more oriented towards specific purposes, with some deviations here and there. This is still the case with these two weapons, but they feel like they're a little bit more scattered than other weapons, instead of being consistently pointing to one end. For example, what's better when aiming down sights? It'd be the Serpent because it's much easier to control, but the VX6-7 has higher bullet velocity and a lower rate of fire, which are usually traits indicative of weapons meant for range. So that's just an example of one of the conflicts, and I'm sure you can piece the rest together, but there are just some traits that seem to be making compromises that supplement their weaknesses rather than improving on their strengths. So what do you value most as a player? If you value low cone of fire while hip firing, If you value very fast reload times, then you go with the VX6-7. If you value controllability while aiming down sights, or if you value putting as many bullets downrange as possible, then you go with the Serpent. But if you value reload time and are also keen on aiming down sights, I'm sorry for your luck, you don't really get an option. And of course, cost is always a factor. As far as general strategy goes, there aren't any amazing insights I can really offer here, so I'm just going to drop some reminders for you instead. First, you want to stay within your effective range, which is about 50 meters or less if you can help it. Hip fire while in extremely close quarters, regardless of which weapon you're using. You'll be able to see more of what's going on around you instead of limiting your field of view while aiming down sights. Do not attack targets that you cannot kill easily. It's usually a smarter move to conserve ammo and run for cover instead of alerting the enemy to your presence. If they turn around and have a weapon better suited to the range or situation, then you shouldn't be begging them to shoot at you. Build this weapon for your strengths. Both weapons are extremely versatile like we mentioned earlier, so it's best to build them toward what you are more proficient at rather than what the attachments seem to lean to. Overall, both the VX6-7 and Serpent are solid weapons. I really like both of them. I'm probably going to continue to use both of them. And like I said at the start of this, I have been a die-hard fan of the VX6-7 for a long time. But I honestly think that the Serpent is a bit of a better option now, especially for my playstyle. And this is kind of the same issue that we had with the SMGs. When Generation 1 SMGs were released, they were absolutely amazing, but then they decided to introduce the Generation 2 SMGs, which are considered by many as just plain better. It's the same sort of situation you see between these two carbines. The VX6-7 is good, it always was good, always will be, but since the buff, the Serpent was able to sell off what were previously its substantial downsides and got a pretty good return on investment. The slightly higher reload speed and larger cone of fire is a small price to pay for the huge accuracy increase while aiming down sights and the substantial rate of fire bonus. In my opinion, SOE was a little bit heavy-handed with their buff to the Serpent's reload speed, and they need to reel that back a little bit in order to make the VX6-7 more competitive, especially for the price point. If this video has been interesting, helpful, or entertaining, please feel free to like, subscribe, tell your friends about the channel, and if you have something you'd like to add or if there's anything I missed, just leave a comment below. Thanks very much, folks. We're all signing off.
We've acquired the facility.